Well, first of all, thank you to the Economist Impact. I'll take these off. I don't look very good with them. Thank you to the Economist Impact for inviting us here today. It's a privilege and indeed daunting to be here in the city of such historic importance and education, democracy, to be with such distinguished and high-level speakers. I'm just pleased to having visited the Acropolis yesterday. I'm just pleased I'm not sitting next to Adonis. I think was on the panel before. So what I would like to do is just divide my comments in my 4 or 5 minutes into 3 areas. One, which we've spoken about already, which is that rapid technological change and uncertainty demands a focus on core competencies and empowers people to adapt. Second, that education and training systems need to change to meet the demand for such competencies. And thirdly, sustainable competitiveness, including the reinforcement of tertiary educations as knowledge hubs, is required to turn these competencies into capabilities, because the skills and competencies aren't only individual assets, they are collective things if they are to actually make a difference to people's lives. So firstly, on the learning competencies, we've already heard about mega trends going on in society, education, employment, and of course everything on everyone's lips at the moment is artificial intelligence. Some of these trends have advanced, accelerated in the pandemic. On artificial intelligence, to just say for education, they should support but not dominate it. But I think beyond these technical skills, there is widespread agreement that it's competencies, transversal skills, which help people to adapt to uncertainty. This has been noted, but I draw your attention to the European Commission's Joint Research Centre work on DigiComp, GreenComp, LifeComp, I think they have now, and I think the latest one is ResearchComp. And I think some of those competencies in terms of bridging education and industry, I would like to see more at the front. But when it comes to competencies in the world of work or society at large, I think it's the combination of these competencies which would lead to different job profiles and for employment strategies and indeed other objectives. It's not just about economic growth, it's also about personal development, social inclusion, active citizenship, or sustainable lifestyles. The second point, what are the implications? I represent institutions that offer applied or professional higher education courses, so I should say something about these future skills and how governments could do to promote this approach to learning. I must say the ministers who have been here have said, it looks like Greece is really on the right track in many areas, but I was concerned about the comment that the technical universities were dismantled some time ago. I mean, higher education institutions are increasingly challenged to innovate to remain competitive. It's driven by pressure on government budgets, but also a declining demographic of the traditional 18 to 21-year-old student. Growing private provision and informal learning. I mean, the value of a traditional degree is being questioned because students now have a multitude of information sources. And I think that's what we can see by this current technological change, is there's an overload, there's an excess of information and options out there. But I would like to suggest that making sense of this overload of information massively increases the value of and demand for practice-based learning around real problem solving. It's more natural for disciplines such as engineering, business or health, but it can be used across the learning spectrum. In Germany, and this was mentioned before, dual education is the most intensive integration with the world of work. There's even an EU university called EU for Dual, and I think Greece should look very closely at that type of dual education model. 30 seconds left, so I'll skip over my other points. I was going to give you a bit of a brief history about recent developments in higher education, including the Bologna process, but I won't. The third point is on sustainable competitiveness and resilience, which was in the agenda here. I think research shows that the most sustainable and resilient societies are usually those with high levels of access to education. Of course, there are other factors as well. But the founding of higher education institutions in the first industrial revolution were in order to provide the skills for the growing industries. Gradually, these institutions became comprehensive and internationally minded and forgot about the local skills that were needed. And we have to try and reverse that trend using their so-called regional and civic role. And in order to do this, policymakers need to integrate their policies. We have skills policies, but we also have economic development policies. And if we don't get the demand right for the skills, things like the innovation strategies. We now have, I think Greece has programmed 110 million in the national operational program for competitiveness in skills for smart specialization. These are like regional innovation strategies. And I would hope the regional programs also had a similar a level of human capital. So I'll finish there. And thank you again for inviting me.